Welcome to Wisdom for the Present, where we take ancient truth and bring it into clear, modern understanding. This episode uses AI-generated narration based on human-researched and written material.
Glad to be here for this one.
So I want you to imagine, just for a second, being the most powerful human being on the planet.
Oh, that's quite a thought experiment.
Right? Like you have absolutely no boss. You have limitless wealth.
Yeah.
You command armies, and you literally hold the power of life and death over millions of people. I mean, no one can tell you no.
It's the ultimate fantasy for a lot of people, I'd say.
Exactly. So under those exact circumstances, what is the very first thing you write in your private secret diary?
Well, you'd think it would be something about your legacy.
Yeah, or like military strategy, conquest, or just how brilliant you are.
Yeah.
But for Marcus Aurelius, writing at the height of the Roman Empire, his answer was none of those things.
Not even close.
No. The very first thing he wrote was basically a meticulous, highly detailed list of thank you notes.
Which, completely flips our entire understanding of power on its head.
It really does. Today, we are immersing ourselves in a deep dive into books 1 and 2 of Marcus Aurelius' Meditations.
And just to be clear, our mission for this deep dive isn't to conduct some dry, dusty historical review, right?
Oh, definitely not.
We're looking at this text as a psychological survival manual because these are the private, unfiltered journal entries of a man trying desperately not to lose his soul to the machinery of absolute power.
Yeah, that's such a great way to frame it. A survival manual.
Right, so we want to extract the mechanisms he used, like his actual mental frameworks, and figure out how you can apply them to the chaos of our modern lives.
And to do that, we really have to start with the ultimate objective of this text. I mean, before we borrow his tools, we need to understand what he actually built them for.
Makes perfect sense. You can't use a tool if you don't know its purpose.
Exactly. So when you read books 1 and 2, you start to see this dual engine of personal growth.
A dual engine, I like that.
Yeah, he's using 2 very specific mechanisms to sort of transform his mindset. The first half of that engine, which totally dominates book 1, is radical gratitude.
But we should clarify, right? Because as we hinted at with the thank you notes, this isn't, it's not that superficial #blessed kind of gratitude we see all over social media today.
Oh yeah, far from it.
Book 1 is essentially a highly detailed ledger. I mean, he systematically goes through the key figures in his life and identifies exactly what moral virtue he extracted from them.
Right. He doesn't just say, thanks for being great. It's highly specific.
Super specific. Like, he starts with his grandfather, Verus, and he notes his gentle and meek disposition.
Just right out of the gate.
Yeah, and then he moves on to his mother. He highlights her piety, and he points out her ability to content herself with a spare diet.
Which is pretty remarkable, considering she had access to the extreme wealth of Roman nobility. She didn't have to eat a spare diet.
Exactly. And then he talks about his brother, Severus, who gave him this vision of an equal commonwealth and, a true love of justice.
Reading this list, it feels almost like an internal Oscar acceptance speech.
Oh, that's a good analogy. How so?
Well, you know how someone wins an award, gets on stage, and they thank the director, their family, their agent.
Right, the usual list.
But usually, the subtext of those speeches is still basically, look at this amazing thing I achieved. Like, they're sharing the credit, but it's still about them.
Ah, I see what you mean. The spotlight is still on their inherent talent.
Exactly. But Marcus is doing the exact inverse here. He is using this ledger to systematically dismantle his own ego.
He's proving to himself in writing that absolutely every good quality he possesses is borrowed.
Yes, he takes 0 credit for his own character.
And the mechanism at play here is just fascinating. It's ego suppression through attribution.
Because when you're the emperor, the entire world is constantly telling you that you are a living god, right?
Literally. They are telling you your brilliance is just inherent. Your virtue is unmatched by anyone else.
So he has to fight against that.
Right. So by meticulously tracing, say, his patience back to his grandfather or his insane work ethic back to a tutor, he is actively building a mental firewall against megalomania.
Wow, a mental firewall.
Yeah, he's constructing an identity based not on some inherent superiority, but on being a fortunate student of other people.
And this is where it gets intense. Radical gratitude alone wasn't enough to keep him grounded.
No, it wasn't.
Because once he realizes who built him, he's immediately hit with this terrifying secondary realization. His time to actually honor those gifts is running out.
That ticking clock.
Exactly. That panic, or Well, maybe not panic, but that fierce urgency is what drives the massive shift in Book 2.
The second half of that dual engine kicks in.
Yep, and it is all about urgent self-correction in the face of mortality.
The tone shift between the two books is honestly jarring. I mean, he goes from this calm, reflective appreciation of his family to essentially grabbing himself by the shoulders and shaking.
It really feels frantic sometimes.
It does. The core realization in Book 2 is that the gods, or nature, have set a strict limit on his time.
And he explicitly tells himself, like, if he doesn't use this remaining time to clear the clouds from his mind, it will pass away.
He will pass away, and the opportunity will never, ever return.
I have to admit, though, I kind of struggle with this framing.
Really? How come?
Well, he tells himself to treat every single action, quote, as thy last action.
Right, the classic Stoic reminder of death.
But if I walked around all day today treating every single email I type or every cup of coffee I drink or my commute, if I treated that as my literal last action on Earth, I wouldn't reach a state of Zen.
You'd probably be a nervous wreck.
I would be paralyzed by a massive panic attack.
Yeah.
I mean, how is this relentless focus on a ticking clock actually supposed to be helpful for us?
Well, it sounds paralyzing if we view it through the lens of modern anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Where we try to optimize every single second for productivity.
Which is exhausting.
Super exhausting. But the psychological aim of this Stoic last action principle isn't to induce panic about what you are achieving.
Okay.
It's actually a filtering mechanism for how you are being. Immediately after he tells himself to act as if it were his last action, he clarifies the purpose.
What's the purpose then?
It is to free himself from all vanity, hypocrisy, and self-love.
Oh, so it's not about frantically doing more things before the buzzer sounds.
Not at all.
It's more about burning away the performative garbage we attach to the things we are already doing anyway.
That is exactly the mechanism. Just think about how much cognitive energy we waste every day on vanity.
Oh, like worrying if a coworker thinks we sound smart in a meeting.
Exactly. Or hypocrisy, right?
Yeah.
Pretending to care about some trivial argument just to save face or look engaged.
We do that all the time.
We do. But when you force your brain to confront the reality that your time is strictly finite, the desire to maintain that fake image just evaporates.
Because you simply do not have the time to be a hypocrite.
Right. You only have time to act with what he calls true and unfeigned gravity, natural affection, freedom, and justice.
So mortality is basically used as a solvent to dissolve the ego.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Which naturally leads him to a rather bleak conclusion about the material world.
Right.
I mean, he writes that the substance of life is ever-flowing, fortune is uncertain, and fame is doubtful.
He's pretty dark there.
He does. He compares the entire human experience to a pilgrimage, to smoke, and to a dream.
Yeah.
But here is my question. If everything we build and everything we are is just smoke, how does he avoid collapsing into pure nihilism? I mean, if it's all fleeting, why try to be a good emperor at all?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
But he avoids nihilism by locating a single, immovable anchor amidst all that chaos.
And he identifies that anchor right at the end of Book 2, right?
He does. He says the anchor is philosophy.
Okay, but we need to define that term carefully, because I don't think he means philosophy in the way a modern university does.
Oh, definitely not. He isn't talking about writing dissertations or sitting in an ivory tower debating abstract logical puzzles.
Right, because in Book 1, he explicitly expresses relief that he didn't fall into the ambition of what he calls ordinary sophists.
Yeah, people who just write tracts or deliver public orations to show off their intellect.
So what did philosophy mean to him then?
For Marcus, philosophy is the active preservation of the inner spirit. It is practically an internal martial art.
An internal martial art.
Yeah, it is the daily practice of keeping the ruling part of your mind, your reason free from being dragged around by unsociable lusts.
Like keeping it free from doing things hypocritically.
Exactly, and accepting whatever happens to you contentedly. He realizes that fame washes away, wealth washes away, entire empires fall.
The only thing that actually adheres to you is the state of your inner character.
Right.
You know, to fully grasp the sheer willpower it took for him to maintain that inner character, we really have to look at the extraordinary circumstances under which this text was written.
This is where it gets so fascinating.
This brings us to the historical and human context of the reluctant emperor. Because we are not reading the musings of a man sitting in a quiet, sunlit study with a cup of tea.
Not even close. The physical reality of this text is just staggering. If you look closely at the end of Book 1, there is this tiny geographic note.
What does it say?
It says, in the country of the Quadi at Granua. And then, at the end of Book 2, there's another note, whilst I was at Carnuntum.
And those are definitely not Roman luxury villas.
No, they are not. The Quadi were a highly hostile Germanic tribe, and Carnuntum was a major, heavily fortified military base along the freezing Danube River.
So we really need to picture this scene here. He is in his 50s, which, by the way, was quite old for that era.
Very old, yeah.
His health is frail. He is thousands of miles from the comforts of Rome, living in a muddy, freezing military encampment.
And he's surrounded by the immense violence of the Marcomannic Wars.
Just constant threat of barbarian invasion, plus the stench of disease because the Antonine Plague was ravaging the empire at this exact time.
Not to mention the crushing logistical nightmare of keeping a massive army fed and functional on the frontier.
It sounds like absolute hell on earth. And amidst that total environmental and political chaos, what is the subject of his writing?
That's the wild part. He is not drafting military strategy. He isn't complaining in his diary about the mud or the incompetence of his generals.
No, he is writing exclusively about his internal moral compass.
He is literally reminding himself not to be an unthankful man. He's interrogating his own soul while a war rages outside his tent.
The cognitive dissonance between his brutal external reality and his serene internal focus is just profound.
It really is.
And I think it highlights a fascinating theme throughout these first two books, which is his conscious, deliberate rejection of the temptations of absolute power.
Yeah, he was terrified of what power could do to him.
He even mentions a lesson he learned from his adoptive father and his tutors, that a prince can actually live in a court without troops of guards, torches, statues, and extraordinary apparel.
Right. He says a man in power can, quote, reduce and contract himself almost to the state of a private man.
He also notes a critical lesson from his teacher, Fronto. Fronto taught him to recognize the envy, fraud, and hypocrisy that are basically the standard operating procedure of a tyrannous king.
Yeah, Fronto really drilled that into him. He was taught to look at the people commonly called nobly born and realize they are often completely devoid of natural affection.
So Marcus was hyper-aware that power is inherently toxic.
Very much so.
It makes me think of a deep-sea diver. You know,
So what do you mean?
well, the deeper you go into the ocean, the more the physical pressure wants to crush you. The absolute power of the Roman throne was exactly that crushing pressure.
I see.
Marcus knew that if he just existed naturally in that environment, his morality would just implode. He would become a tyrant.
He'd get crushed by it.
Right. So stripping away the guards, refusing the luxury apparel, and reducing himself to a private man, that was his pressurized suit.
That's a great metaphor.
It was a mechanical way to depressurize his environment, so he didn't get the moral equivalent of the bends.
That is the exact mechanism. He was deliberately engineering friction against his own power.
And that engineering totally extended to his social circle, too.
Oh, absolutely. Think about the danger of flatterers.
Right. When you hold the power of life and death over everyone, every single person in your proximity has a massive financial and survival incentive to tell you that every idea you have is brilliant.
You are living in the ultimate terrifying echo chamber.
Which explains perfectly why he specifically singles out his mentor, Sextus, for praise.
Yeah, he says Sextus's conversation was a model of how to accommodate all people.
And he says simply being in his company was sweeter and more pleasing than any flatterer's cogging and fawning.
He craved authenticity because it was arguably the rarest commodity in his entire life.
And the journal itself is the ultimate expression of that craving, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. When everyone around you is paid to lie to you, your private diary becomes the only mirror that reflects the brutal truth.
It was his daily mechanism for piercing the bubble of his own empire.
Exactly.
Well, that historical context is just incredible. But let's shift gears now and translate this ancient context into our 21st century reality.
Let's do it.
How does a diary written in a muddy Roman camp apply to our modern careers, our relationships, and frankly, our glowing screens?
Well, there is a line in book 2 that feels almost eerily prophetic when you consider modern habits.
Which one?
He commands himself, quote, "Away with thy books, suffer not thy mind any more to be distracted and carried to and fro."
Okay, as someone who absolutely loves reading, I hit a massive wall when I first read that line.
I think a lot of people do.
Right. Away with thy books. It sounds completely anti-intellectual. Why on earth would a philosopher tell himself to stop reading?
We really have to translate what books represented in his specific context.
Okay, what did they represent?
He is warning against the trap of endless theoretical study without any practical application. In his time, you could spend your entire life debating abstract logical syllogisms.
Or reading philosophical tracts without ever actually changing your behavior.
Precisely. And he pairs this with a warning against people who, quote, toil in life, but have no certain scope or purpose to direct their motions.
They're just wandering mentally.
Exactly.
So if we translate that mechanism today, he is essentially describing the modern crisis of information overload.
Without a doubt.
The 21st century equivalent of away with thy books is put down your phone and stop doom scrolling.
It absolutely is.
We live in an era where we are constantly carried to and fro across social media feeds, news aggregators, and endless video streams.
We consume a staggering amount of data daily.
We toil and labor at our screens, but we have no certain scope. We have no guiding purpose for consuming all that information.
It is the illusion of learning masking a deep, deep distraction.
That's exactly what it feels like.
Right, because we get a dopamine hit from acquiring a new fact or reading a new article, and we trick ourselves into thinking we are being productive or expanding our minds.
But we aren't really changing.
No. If that information doesn't translate into active virtue, if it doesn't make you a better friend, a better citizen, or a more patient human being, Marcus would argue it is just sophisticated mental wandering.
It is a distraction from the actual work of living.
Yeah.
And speaking of distractions, here is where his diary cuts right to the bone of our current cultural moment.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah. In book 1, he expresses deep gratitude for his upbringing because it taught him not to become addicted to the Procini and Venetti.
The Greens and the Blues, these were the major chariot racing factions in Rome.
Right. And he also mentions not favoring the gladiatorial factions like the Parmulari or the Secators.
Now, we're going to look at this strictly through a psychological lens today, but think about the human tendency toward tribalism that he is identifying here.
Oh, it's huge because the chariot factions in Rome are a perfect historical mirror for modern tribalism.
They really are. These weren't just sports teams where you bought a tunic and cheered on the weekend. They were deeply entrenched cultural, social, and sometimes political identities.
People literally rioted in the streets over the Greens and the Blues.
They did. Citizens defined their entire sense of self by which color they supported.
And the psychological mechanism hasn't changed in 2,000 years. Only the labels have.
Sad but true.
Today we see this exact same dynamic in extreme political polarization, cultural tribalism, or even fierce brand loyalties online.
We tie our identity to a faction.
We do, and we spend our emotional energy defending our quote-unquote team and violently attacking the other team.
And what Marcus is diagnosing here is that this factionalism is actually a form of mental slavery.
Mental slavery, that's a strong phrase.
But it's true. When you outsource your identity to a faction, you surrender your inner peace to external events you cannot control.
Right.
If your entire emotional stability relies on the Greens winning the chariot race, or your modern faction winning an argument on the internet, your mind is no longer your own.
It belongs to the mob.
Exactly. The text urges us to step back, to refuse to let partisan bickering hijack our reason, because it completely distracts us from the only thing we actually control.
Which is our own personal character.
Bingo.
It's a massive, exhausting distraction. And there's another modern trap he addresses perfectly regarding how we relate to the people in our lives.
Are you talking about the busy trap?
Yes, the busy trap.
This is a brilliant observation he pulls from a mentor named Alexander the Platonic.
Right. He writes that he learned not to frequently say or write in a letter, "I am not at leisure."
And he explicitly states that we shouldn't constantly put off the duties we owe to our friends and acquaintances under the pretense of urgent affairs.
I physically cringed when I read that.
I think we all do. It hits too close to home.
It cuts so deep into modern professional culture. I mean, how often do you send a text that says, "So sorry, I've been MIA. Things are just insanely busy right now."
Way too often.
We wear our busyness as a badge of honor. We use our urgent affairs, our inboxes, our meetings, our projects, as a socially acceptable shield to avoid the vulnerability or effort of maintaining real relationships.
Yeah, we use the word busy because it sounds like we are a victim of our circumstances.
It definitely sounds better than saying, "I have chosen to prioritize other things over our friendship."
Marcus is calling out this linguistic hypocrisy right there.
And honestly, he had the right to. He was running a global empire during a war and a plague.
If anyone had a legitimate claim to urgent affairs, it was him.
Right. Yet he is reminding himself that busyness is almost always a choice, and using it as a blanket excuse is a failure of character.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
It really is. So we've translated the problems, information overload, tribalism, and the busy trap.
But Marcus wasn't just diagnosing issues, remember? He was building a practical daily toolkit to survive them.
Exactly. So if we want to steal his exact routines, what are the practical how-tos we can pull from these two books?
The most immediate and practical tool is found right at the opening of Book 2.
The famous morning routine.
Yes. Which we could call the premeditation of difficult people.
What does he say?
He writes, "Betimes in the morning say to thyself, this day I shall have to do with an idle, curious man, with an unthankful man, a railer, a crafty, false, or an envious man, an unsociable, uncharitable man."
It just sounds incredibly pessimistic, waking up and actively imagining everyone you meet is going to be terrible.
It sounds dark, but the how-to here is actually about expectation management.
How so?
Well, think about our daily lives. We get furious when someone cuts us off in traffic, or a coworker throws us under the bus, or a customer is inexplicably rude.
Yeah, it ruins my whole day sometimes.
And we act utterly shocked as if this is the first time in human history that a person has acted selfishly.
Which is pretty ridiculous when you say it out loud.
Exactly. The psychological tool here is removing that shock value. Anger is often a product of violated expectations.
Oh, that makes sense.
If you expect the world to be perfectly fair and everyone to be perfectly kind, you will be in a constant state of rage.
So by actively reminding yourself in the morning that human flaws exist,
you calibrate your expectations to reality. When the unthankful man inevitably shows up in your office, you don't react with outrage. You react with calm recognition.
You just think, the schedule is proceeding as expected. Here is the unthankful man.
Precisely.
And he doesn't stop at just expecting them to be difficult. He gives us an incredible biological analogy for how to treat them.
The teeth analogy.
Yes. He reminds himself that this difficult person is his kinsman. Not by blood, but because they share the same human capacity for reason.
Right.
And then he writes that humans are built to work together, quote, as the feet, the hands, and the eyelids, as the rows of the upper and under teeth.
It's so vivid.
It is. Getting mad at a frustrating person is like your top teeth getting angry at your bottom teeth.
It entirely reframes the concept of conflict.
Complete.
If your coworker is obstructing you, your immediate instinct is to view them as an enemy to be destroyed. But if you view humanity as a single organism, destroying them actually harms you.
You don't punch yourself in the jaw because your teeth grind.
Exactly. You're trying to bring the system back into alignment. It forces you to approach the difficult person with a sense of shared, albeit dysfunctional biology rather than pure hostility.
I love that. Okay, so practice number 2 from his toolkit is what I would call deconstructing anxiety.
This is a powerful one.
Marcus does this fascinating mental exercise where he breaks his own existence down into parts to reduce his stress.
It is a profound exercise in reductionism. He says, whatsoever I am is either flesh or life, or that which we commonly call the mistress and overruling part of man, reason.
And then he just ruthlessly minimizes the physical components.
He tells himself to think little of his flesh. He says it's just blood, bones, a skin, a pretty piece of knit and twisted work consisting of nerves, veins, and arteries.
And his life or his breath is just wind sucked in and out.
It's wind.
A pretty piece of knit and twisted work.
Yeah.
The phrasing is beautiful, but the mechanism is really ruthless.
It is, yeah.
The how-to here is about gaining perspective when your brain is catastrophizing.
Yeah.
Let's say you are overwhelmed with anxiety about a massive presentation or a financial crisis.
Your brain is generating a terrifying narrative about the future.
Right. And Marcus is saying, stop the narrative. Strip it down to the present physical reality.
By reducing yourself to your biological components, you are basically starving the amygdala, the fear center of the brain, of the narrative fuel it needs to keep you panicked.
You literally just look at your hands and say, these are just nerves and veins.
You notice your breathing and say, this is just wind moving in and out. You turn off the brain's threat response by making your physical reality incredibly boring and molecular.
Because then you realize the crisis exists entirely in the overruling part, the reason.
Which means you have the authority to simply turn off the alarm.
That reduction to the present physical moment leads perfectly into practice 3, which explores his mind-bending view on time and death.
Oh, this one is a trip.
He argues that we only ever lose the present.
It is a complex argument in Book 2, but it is incredibly liberating once understood.
So lay it out for us.
He states that whether a person lives for 3,000 years or just a few short decades, when they die, they lose the exact same thing.
Okay, my initial reaction to that is total disagreement.
Most people react that way.
I mean, how can the person living 3,000 years and the person living 30 years lose the same thing? The 30-year-old is losing decades of potential experiences.
That is the illusion he is trying to break right there. His logic rests entirely on the definition of ownership.
Ownership.
Yeah. He argues that you cannot lose what you do not own. So do you own the past?
No, the past is gone. It no longer exists.
Do you own the future?
Well, absolutely not. The future is an imaginary construct that hasn't happened yet and is never actually guaranteed.
Right. Can't be robbed of a house you never owned.
Okay, I see it now.
Precisely. The only real estate any human being actually possesses is the razor-thin sliver of time that constitutes the present moment.
Just right now.
Therefore, when death arrives, whether you are young or ancient, the universe is only depriving you of that one specific present moment.
Because you aren't losing decades of the future, because those decades were never in your possession to begin with.
Exactly.
The practical application for us is to stop mourning the loss of time. We cause ourselves immense psychological suffering by grieving a future we thought we were entitled to.
Or agonizing over a past we wish we could somehow edit.
Right. If you fully internalize that the present split second is the only thing you actually have, it forces you to stop squandering it on anxiety about the rest of the timeline.
It is incredibly empowering, but we have to be honest here.
Yeah.
Reaching that state of mind requires overcoming massive internal resistance.
Which brings us to the obstacles to growth. Because these practices sound great in theory, but some of these ideas clash violently with modern sensibilities.
Very violently. Some of this text is deeply, deeply uncomfortable.
Let's start with the illusion of legacy. Marcus delivers a brutally stark assessment of fame and being remembered after you die.
He is totally unsparing on this topic. He states that all worldly things are corruptible.
He argues that the memories of people are quickly dissolved into the general age and time of the world.
He compares human life to smoke and explicitly writes, "Fame after life is no better than oblivion."
That is a massive obstacle for a modern listener.
Oh, huge.
Our entire culture is built on the concept of personal branding. From the time we are kids, we are told to leave a mark on the world, to build a legacy, to make sure our name is remembered.
The entire tech industry in Silicon Valley is driven by leaders wanting to, make a dent in the universe.
Right. So to look a modern professional in the eye and say, your life's work is smoke, and being famous after you die is exactly the same as being totally forgotten, that is an ego death most people will actively reject.
It is a total ego death. We are terrified of our own insignificance, so we build monuments, whether literal buildings or digital footprints, to try and cheat death.
But Marcus is pointing out the absurdity of this.
Yeah, you are seeking the applause of people who aren't born yet, and you won't even be around to hear it.
So what's the value in accepting that?
The profound value in accepting this uncomfortable truth is freedom.
Freedom from the audience.
Yes. If you are constantly performing for the sake of your legacy or managing how history will view you, your actions are corrupted by vanity.
You're just acting for the crowd.
Right. Accepting that fame is oblivion frees you to do the right thing right now, purely because it is the right thing.
Not because it will look good on your Wikipedia page or your social media feed.
Exactly. It purifies your motives.
That makes rational sense, even if it hurts the ego a bit. But there's another obstacle that might be even harder to accept.
The Stoic demand for apatheia.
Yes, apatheia, unpassionateness. In Book 1, he praises his mentor Sextus for being a man without ever the least appearance of anger or any other passion, able at the same time most exactly to observe the Stoic apatheia and yet to be most tender-hearted.
And throughout Book 2, he constantly warns against being overcome by pleasure or pain.
The reason this is a hurdle today is because we live in a culture that absolutely worships emotional expression.
We really do.
Modern pop psychology often tells us to live our truth, which usually translates to act on whatever strong feelings you are currently experiencing.
Yeah, we are told that expressing anger is healthy and pursuing desire is authentic.
So the idea of deliberately observing apatheia, of actually extinguishing passions, sounds to us like toxic psychological repression.
Which is a fundamental misunderstanding of the ancient concept.
As so.
When he strives for apatheia, he is not trying to become some cold, unfeeling robot. Note that he explicitly pairs it with being most tender-hearted.
Oh, right.
He isn't devoid of love, care, or joy. What he is trying to eradicate are the violent, irrational, sweeping emotions that hijack reason.
Ah, so it's the difference between feeling an emotion and being ruled by it.
Exactly. The Stoic view is that being yanked around by unchecked anger, blinding lust, or paralyzing fear is the opposite of authenticity.
It is a form of slavery.
True freedom is found in the gap between a stimulus and your response. Apatheia is simply maintaining the sovereignty of your rational mind so that you can choose how to act.
Rather than reacting blindly to a chemical spike in your brain.
You've got it.
But even with that clarification, there is one concept in Book 2 that feels almost impossible to swallow.
The aposteme.
Yes, the idea of the aposteme.
This is one of his most striking and difficult metaphors.
Tell us about it.
He warns that a man's soul wrongs itself and becomes an aposteme, which translates to an abscess, a tumor, or an unnatural excrescency on the universe when it is grieved or displeased with anything that happens.
The tumor on the universe. Just for being upset that something bad happened.
Yeah.
I mean, if I am listening to this right now and I have recently lost my job, or I am dealing with a chronic illness, or I am grieving the loss of a loved one, the idea that my grief makes my soul a tumor on the universe feels incredibly cold and unsympathetic.
It feels awful.
Why would he use a biological defect to describe human grief?
It really requires an understanding of his cosmic worldview, which involves radical surrender.
Okay, radical surrender.
He believed the universe was a deeply interconnected, rational organism. Every single event, even the painful ones, is a necessary part of the functioning of the whole.
I see where this is going.
Therefore, to rebel against reality, to be furious that a loved one died or that you lost your job, is to act like a cancerous cell fighting the body it belongs to.
The resistance itself is the tumor.
Yes.
It's the psychological toll of fighting reality.
Exactly. The primary pain is the event itself, the illness or the job loss.
Which is hard enough.
Right. But the secondary pain, which is often much worse, is the agonizing narrative we create that this shouldn't be happening to me.
So Marcus is arguing that by demanding the universe conform to your preferences, you mutate your own soul.
You do. But you are absolutely right. Applying that level of cosmic surrender to acute, tragic human suffering requires immense, perhaps nearly impossible, psychological fortitude.
Which is exactly why we need our next section. Wisdom with discernment.
Yes, this is crucial.
Because we are separated by 2,000 years from this author, we shouldn't just swallow every single word as absolute gospel.
We really shouldn't.
We need to evaluate his ancient assumptions and separate the enduring truths from the specific worldview of a Roman emperor.
And a prime example of where we need careful discernment is the Stoic concept of indifference, particularly regarding wealth and poverty.
Yes, in Book 2, Marcus explicitly states that things like life, death, honor, dishonor, labor, pleasure, riches, and poverty all happen equally to good and bad people.
Right.
Therefore, he concludes, they are neither good nor bad in themselves. They are indifference.
The philosophical logic here is that only virtue like justice or courage is intrinsically good, and only vice like cruelty or greed is intrinsically bad.
So wealth or poverty are just neutral materials. It's how you use them that matters.
That's the Stoic view, yes.
But let's apply some critical pushback here.
Please do.
It is a lot easier to philosophically declare that poverty is neither good nor bad when you are literally the wealthiest human being on earth.
That is a very fair point.
If we look back at his ledger in Book 1, he talks about how his father enjoyed the conveniences of his immense fortune and how Marcus himself was able to get good and able teachers at home, even at excessive charges.
He had infinite resources.
He did it.
It is a highly valid critique. He was writing from a position of profound systemic privilege.
For a modern listener, we have to acknowledge a socioeconomic blind spot here. On an individual level, it is deeply useful to cultivate a mindset that doesn't tie your self-worth to your bank account.
You don't want to be destroyed if you lose your money.
Exactly. But on a societal level, we cannot use this ancient philosophy to ignore real systemic struggles. Poverty today causes immense, measurable suffering. It limits access to healthcare, education, and safety.
We can admire his personal attempt to remain detached from his luxury, but we shouldn't use his philosophy as a weapon to dismiss the harsh reality of poverty as merely a neutral occurrence.
That is the essence of discernment. We can adopt the psychological resilience the philosophy offers without adopting the political or socioeconomic blind spots of a second-century autocrat.
Well said. And there's another fascinating area requiring discernment in this text.
What's that?
The tension between superstition and reason.
Oh, this is a wild paradox to read.
Isn't it?
In Book 1, he praises Diognetus for teaching him not to believe the things commonly spoken by sorcerers or prestidigitators and impostors regarding charms and the driving out of demons.
He sounds like a modern, rational scientist rejecting superstition.
But then just a few paragraphs later, When he is thanking the gods for his blessings, he literally thanks them for giving him medical cures through dreams.
Yeah, he says he received help by dreams to stay his casting of blood and to cure his dizziness, specifically noting that this happened to him in the city of Kaheta.
So wait, no demons and no magical charms, but the gods are directly sending him medical prescriptions while he sleeps.
It seems totally contradictory.
How do we reconcile the rational philosopher with the superstitious Roman?
We don't really have to reconcile it perfectly. We just have to understand the era.
Fair enough.
Highly educated Romans of the 2nd century were moving toward rational, observable philosophy, but they were still deeply embedded in a world of active deities, omens, and divine providence.
And more importantly, how do we extract the wisdom from it? I mean, we don't need to adopt the ancient belief in literal dream cures.
No, definitely not.
What we extract is the broader psychological posture he is cultivating. The enduring truth isn't the mechanics of the cure. It's the profound sense of humility.
He is cultivating a deep gratitude toward the unexplainable forces, whether you label that luck, nature, the universe, or God, that shape our lives.
And provide for us in ways we cannot fully control or comprehend.
The object of his gratitude is ancient, but the practice of humility remains incredibly potent today.
That is a brilliant way to distill it. And this leads us to our final major section, comparative insight.
Because it's important to remember that Marcus Aurelius didn't invent these ideas in a vacuum while sitting alone in a muddy tent.
Right, he was pulling from a massive web of human wisdom, participating in a conversation that had been going on for centuries and continues today.
The text is deeply conversational with the past. For instance, he brings up a standard set by Socrates.
Oh, I remember this part.
When praising his adoptive father, Antonius Pius, and later his mentor, Maximus, Marcus uses Socrates as the ultimate benchmark.
He says a man might have applied to his father what was recorded of Socrates, that he knew how to want and to enjoy those things, in the want whereof most men show themselves weak, and in the fruition intemperate.
It is a stunning phrase. It bridges Roman Stoicism directly back to classical Greek philosophy, highlighting a universal human goal.
The mastery of moderation and the cultivation of an invincible inner strength.
Think about the mechanics of that phrase. Knowing how to lack something without whining, and knowing how to enjoy something without overindulging.
It destroys the idea that philosophers just sit around hating pleasure.
Exactly. The ideal isn't to never enjoy a good meal or a comfortable bed. The ideal is to enjoy it fully when it's there, but to be completely unbroken if it is suddenly taken away.
That is such a powerful distinction. He also pulls from other philosophical schools to debate human nature, doesn't he?
Yes, he cites Theophrastus when discussing the nature of sin. And it's worth noting that Theophrastus was not a Stoic. He was a student of Aristotle.
Which shows Marcus was willing to step outside his own philosophical echo chamber to find truth.
Yes. In Book 2, he notes Theophrastus's comparison of sins. Theophrastus claimed that sins committed through lust are actually worse or more blameworthy than sins committed through anger.
This opens up a timeless human conversation about accountability and willpower.
The logic here is fascinating. Theophrastus argued that anger usually implies a preceding grievance, someone wronged you, and the pain of that wrong creates a spasm that forces you to turn away from reason.
It is a reaction to an external stimulus.
But lust, or being overcome by pleasure, is entirely self-generated. You resolve upon that action merely to satisfy yourself. It is a premeditated surrender of reason.
You know, we still have this exact debate today in modern psychology and the legal system.
We do. Think about the difference between a crime of passion and premeditated action.
The human struggle to categorize our weaknesses, to understand the drivers of our behavior, and to assign moral weight to our actions is just a continuous thread throughout all of history.
Finally, we have to look at the incredible cross-pollination of social classes embedded in this philosophy.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
In Book 1, Marcus gives explicit thanks for being introduced to the writings of Epictetus, specifically his moral commentaries.
This is perhaps the most poetic and powerful connection in the entire text. Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome, born into the absolute highest echelons of global power.
Right. And Epictetus, the philosopher whose writings he cherished and studied so deeply, spent his early life as a slave.
The visual of that is stunning. The most powerful man on the planet is looking to a former slave to learn how to be free.
It proves that the core mechanisms of this philosophy about controlling your mind when you cannot control your circumstances, transcend absolutely all social and economic boundaries.
The emperor and the slave are united by the exact same internal struggle.
He also quotes Monomus the Cynic, noting the phrase that all is but opinion and conceit,
Which connects to the most universal philosophical thread in the ancient world.
found in Stoicism, Cynicism, and parallel traditions in the East like Buddhism. It is the fundamental realization that reality is not shaped by external events, but entirely by our internal perception and framing of those events.
It all comes back to the power of the mind to frame the world.
It is the defining feature of the human experience.
As we wrap up this incredibly deep journey into the mind of a reluctant Roman emperor, I want to leave you with the final provocative thought.
Something to take away.
Yes, something for you to mull over or explore on your own today, taking these ancient tools and applying them to your immediate reality.
I love this challenge.
If you were to sit down tonight, open a blank document, and write your own personal version of Book 1.
Your own ledger.
If you were to make a meticulous ledger listing every single person who shaped you, identifying exactly what specific virtue or hard lesson they gave you, and taking absolutely zero credit for your own goodness, who would be on your list?
It's a heavy question.
Would it be a parent, a teacher who challenged you, a tough boss, or maybe a friend who showed you grace in a moment when you didn't deserve it?
It really makes you think.
And more importantly, if you actually took the time to write that list, if you deeply internalize the mechanism that you are nothing more than a mosaic of other people's gifts, how would writing that list change the way you interact with the world tomorrow morning?
That is a profound exercise to try.
That's the heart of this section. This is Wisdom for the Present, where understanding leads to clarity, and clarity shapes how we see and live. We'll see you in the next episode.